Medieval Europe was a time of deep faith, fear, and mysticism. For people of that era, the world seemed full of dangers, invisible forces, and supernatural beings. Witchcraft and magic were not seen as fairy tales, but as real threats capable of destroying lives, crops, or the health of entire towns. Anyone who appeared different, possessed unusual knowledge, or behaved strangely could fall under suspicion. Witches, sorcerers, and magicians embodied all the fears of society. Accusations of magic often became instruments of fear and control. Even the smallest deviation from social norms, a strange illness, a failed harvest, or a misfortune, could be attributed to witchcraft. The church played a key role in shaping these beliefs. Priests preached that the devil acted in the world through those who practiced black magic. The fear of curses and demons was so great that people were willing to accuse neighbors, acquaintances, and even relatives to prove their devotion to faith and their fear of punishment. Legends about witches were especially terrifying. Tales of nocturnal Sabbaths, transformations into animals, and secret pacts with demons were passed down from generation to generation. These stories fueled mass panic, making people believe that anyone could fall victim to magic. In towns and villages, people sought protection with amulets, holy water, prayers, and rituals intended to neutralize witchcraft. However, not all magic was purely superstition. Some practices were real knowledge, passed down by herbalists, healers, alchemists, and wise men who used herbs, chemical reactions, and natural phenomena to heal and predict the future. Despite their intentions, people viewed such skills with suspicion. Any success that seemed unnatural was considered evidence of a pact with the devil. Accusations of witchcraft became especially dangerous during periods of social or political crisis. Wars, epidemics, and famine increased fear, and people sought culprits. Women, particularly those who were poor, single, or unusual, became easy targets. A witch trial could start with minor rumors and end with torture to extract a confession. Medieval society was built on fear, and magic was used as a tool of control. Accusations and trials not only reflected belief in the supernatural but also reinforced the power of the church and local rulers. Thus, magic, curses, and witches became part of everyday life, shaping moral and social norms. In this context, we begin to understand how difficult life was in the Middle Ages. Every action could be judged through the lens of witchcraft and magic. Fear of the unseen controlled people's destinies and behavior. When discussing magic in the Middle Ages, it is important to understand that it had many forms. Some practices were relatively harmless, such as herbal remedies, protective charms, and minor spells. Others, more mystical and terrifying to society, were considered black magic. These were rituals involving the summoning of spirits, demons, or dark forces, and they often led to accusations and trials. Many believed witches could transform into animals, fly on broomsticks, and perform harmful actions both in dreams and in waking life. To prove their magical power, the accused allegedly conducted secret rites, drawing symbols on the ground, preparing special potions, and chanting spells in unknown languages. Entire spellbooks existed, which later became targets of inquisitors. Some contained recipes for herbs, love potions, remedies for illness, and even instructions to curse enemies. Sometimes the accused genuinely practiced these skills, but often it was simply herbalism or alchemy misunderstood by ordinary people. Any unusual mixture or ritual could be interpreted as evidence of a pact with the devil. The Inquisition actively sought such proof, and even simple artifacts like amulets or wall drawings could be used against someone. The stories of the accused were often tragic. Women and men believed to be witches faced interrogations, torture, and public humiliation. Even if a person had no magical ability, fear and societal pressure could force them to confess. Some used their knowledge to heal or protect, but those same actions could turn against them, as uncommon skills sparked suspicion and envy. Among the tools of witchcraft were amulets, talismans, spellbooks, magical herbs, and ritual objects. Each had a purpose: protection, healing, or cursing. The church viewed these items as manifestations of the devil, while society saw them as proof of evil power. Even simple herbal powders or symbolic drawings could be considered witchcraft. In certain regions of Europe, there were real schools of magic teaching spells, potion-making, and rituals. Knowledge was passed secretly due to the danger of accusation. Accusations could spread to entire families, neighbors, or students, as fear of magic outweighed reason. Magic also became a tool for social control. Accusing someone allowed society to maintain authority, instill fear, and strengthen the church's power. Trials often had a theatrical element. The accused was displayed publicly, questioned about pacts with the devil, and tortured to extract confessions. Thus, real witchcraft in the Middle Ages combined herbal knowledge and rituals with myths, fear, and prejudice. For people of that time, it was not mere occult art but a part of daily life affecting decisions, social status, and the fate of entire towns. One of the most terrifying aspects of witchcraft accusations was the interrogations and torture applied by the Inquisition and local courts. A person suspected of magic could be placed in dungeon cells, where cold, dampness, and darkness intensified fear and helplessness. The main goal was not merely punishment, but to force a confession, even from the innocent. Interrogations often involved psychological pressure. The accused could be deprived of sleep, left in darkness for days, or forced to stand or sit in painful positions. Sometimes people were placed in chambers of fear, tiny rooms where isolation and darkness created illusions of demonic presence. In such conditions, the mind gradually broke, and people were willing to admit to any crimes attributed to them. Physical torture was also widespread. Inquisitors used stretching devices, iron clamps, water, simulated drowning, and other instruments to coerce statements. Even brief exposure could shatter a person's will. Torture was accompanied by constant threats of death, burning at the stake, or public humiliation, which amplified the psychological pressure. Accused witches were questioned about Sabbaths and pacts with the devil, compelled to describe nocturnal gatherings, transformations into animals, and magical rituals. If answers were considered insufficient, the torture continued. Confessions to impossible acts were common, as victims sought to end their suffering. Over time, interrogations and torture became almost theatrical. Inquisitors demonstrated power and instilled fear to control society. The accused were displayed publicly, and confessions were recorded as proof, intensifying fear among townspeople and villagers. It is important to note that not all accused were women. Men, especially alchemists, herbalists, and wise men, could also be suspected. Anyone possessing knowledge beyond common understanding could be accused of magic. Knowledge of herbs, potions, alchemy, or astrology was often seen as supernatural and could lead to arrest. Thus, interrogations and torture were integral to the medieval hunt for witches. They combined physical pain with psychological pressure, turning investigations into instruments of fear. Anyone under suspicion faced an ordeal where faith, fear, and reason intertwined in a cruel test that determined their fate. Public executions were the culmination of the medieval hunt for witches and sorcerers. They took place in city squares, where crowds gathered to witness just punishment. These events combined terror, spectacle, and social control. Demonstrative executions reminded people that witchcraft was punishable by death, and that the church and rulers wielded absolute authority. One of the most terrifying methods was burning at the stake. The accused was tied to a wooden structure, which was slowly ignited, immersing the person in agonizing pain. This method was seen as purification of the soul, while simultaneously terrifying witnesses. The crowd witnessed the deadly consequences of accusations, reinforcing fear of witchcraft and the power of religious institutions. Other forms of public execution included the breaking wheel, hanging, and drowning, each carrying symbolic and intimidating significance. Tortures and executions were often theatrical. The accused were displayed before the crowd, questioned about deals with the devil, and then punished. This reinforced belief in supernatural powers and the necessity of obeying church laws. Such public punishments not only instilled fear but also shaped collective consciousness. People learned to identify the guilty and impure, uphold social norms, and fear magic. Accusations could spread like a chain reaction. One convicted person could lead to the arrest of neighbors, relatives, or apprentices. Fear of magic penetrated all aspects of life, from personal relationships to political decisions. At the same time, stories of witches, magic, and public executions have endured as part of culture and history. They show how fear of the unknown could be used as a tool of power. These accounts serve as grim reminders of how belief, superstition, and social pressure influenced people's lives. Today, we can look back with astonishment at these events, understanding the horrors that people in the Middle Ages endured. They survive in legends, historical documents, and artistic reconstructions, remaining a part of the darker side of human history. Black magic and witchcraft in the Middle Ages are not just stories of the supernatural. They are lessons in how fear and the unknown shaped human life, how power exploited myths and panic to control populations, and why the memory of witches and sorcerers has endured to this day.